Trail of Terror, the ABC Murders of Moses Sithole. In the early 1990s, South Africa was a nation on the brink of monumental change. However, beneath the surface of this hopeful era lurked a chilling darkness. Between July 1994 and November 1995, Moses Sithole, one of South Africa's most notorious serial killers, embarked on a murderous spree that terrorized the communities of Atteridgeville, Boksburg, and Cleveland, areas that would mark the chilling sequence of the ABC murders. Born on November 17, 1964, in Vosloorus, a large township in the Boksburg area, Sithole's early life was marked by hardship and turbulence. His parents, Simon and Sophie Sithole, struggled to support their family of 5 children in apartheid-era South Africa. Growing up under the oppressive system of apartheid, he experienced firsthand the socio-economic disparities that plagued his community. When Moses was just 5 years old, his father Simon died, leaving the family destitute. Unable to support her children, Sophie Sithole made a desperate decision that would forever shape her son's psyche. She gathered her children and abandoned them at a local police station, instructing them never to tell the officers she was their mother. This abandonment would later become a defining trauma in Moses's life. The children were placed in an orphanage in Benoni, but the boys were soon transferred to another facility in KwaZulu-Natal. According to Sithole's later accounts, the children suffered systematic abuse during their 3 years in the orphanage. Unable to endure the mistreatment, teenage Moses ran away and sought refuge with his older brother Patrick. Moses found employment in various menial capacities, including work on farms and in the numerous gold mines surrounding Johannesburg. However, his childhood trauma had already begun to manifest in disturbing ways. His relationships with women were consistently short-lived, and it has been suggested that his mother's abandonment played a crucial role in his increasingly aggressive attitudes toward women. Sithole's descent into criminality began with sexual violence. In his early 20s, he committed at least 3 rapes before one victim, Bayiswa Doris Swakamisa, finally testified against him in court. In February 1989, following Swakamisa's brave decision to report the attack, Sithole was arrested and charged with rape. During his trial, Sithole maintained his innocence throughout the proceedings. However, the prosecution presented compelling evidence, and he was found guilty of rape. In 1989, he was sentenced to 6 years in Boksburg prison. Ironically, he proved to be a model prisoner and was released early in 1993 for good behavior, a decision that would have catastrophic consequences. Sithole later claimed that his time in prison, where he himself was sexually assaulted by other inmates, was what turned him into a murderer. He explained his subsequent crimes by saying that the women he murdered all reminded him of those who had falsely accused him of rape years before. Perhaps most chillingly, Sithole may have learned a deadly lesson during his incarceration, that rape victims left alive could testify against him. By 1994, shortly after his release, Sithole had begun his transformation from rapist to serial killer. At the time of his crimes, he appeared to those around him as a mild-mannered individual managing a shell organization called Youth Against Human Abuse, ostensibly devoted to the eradication of child abuse. This facade provided him with the perfect cover for his heinous activities. The first confirmed murder occurred on July 16, 1994, when 18-year-old Maria Monane Manama was killed. Between January and April 1995, the bodies of 4 young black women who had been strangled and raped were discovered in Atteridgeville, west of Pretoria. The victims showed a disturbing pattern. They had been tied up and strangled with their own underwear, and many were found with pieces of clothing draped across their faces. As more bodies were discovered, a chilling modus operandi emerged. Sithole would lure women with promises of employment through his bogus charity organization. He would arrange to meet them for job interviews, then transport them to remote fields where he would beat, strip, rape, and strangle them with articles of their own clothing. Several victims were found with their hands tied behind their backs, and one still wore a blindfold when discovered. The scale of Sithole's crimes began to emerge when bodies were discovered one after another, creating a state of panic and fear. Initially, police were unsure whether a single killer was responsible due to the varying methods of attack. However, as the chronology of deaths became apparent, clear evidence showed that the killer was evolving his murder technique to extract the greatest pain from his victims. By July 1995, the situation had become so dire that a witness observed Sithole acting suspiciously while in the company of a young woman. When the witness investigated, he discovered her body, though he had been too far away to identify the killer. A special investigating team was established within the Pretoria Murder and Robbery Unit to determine whether the murders conformed to a pattern. The media dubbed these crimes the ABC murders, a reference to the geographical spread of Sithole's activities across Atteridgeville, Boksburg, and Cleveland. The discovery of mass graves in September 1995 at Van Dyke Mine near Boksburg revealed the true horror of the situation. Forensic experts recovered 10 bodies in varying degrees of decomposition over 48 hours, confirming investigators' fears that the killings were linked. The public's terror reached such heights that President Nelson Mandela himself made a personal visit to Boksburg to appeal for public assistance in apprehending the killer. The president's unprecedented involvement demonstrated the national significance of these crimes and the urgent need to stop the perpetrator. Media attention was intense throughout the recovery operation, and with the South African police under immense pressure, local authorities sought external help. On September 23, 1995, retired FBI profiler Robert Ressler arrived to assist in developing a psychological profile of the serial killer. Ressler, working alongside South Africa's first criminal profiler, Mickey Pistorius, developed a comprehensive profile. They determined that an intelligent, organized individual with a high sex drive was responsible, operating with a growing sense of confidence. The profile suggested the killer was a black male in his late 20s or early 30s, self-employed with access to money, who drove an expensive car and wore flashy clothes and jewelry. The profilers accurately predicted that the killer was socially competent and charming, particularly with women, and that he would likely contact the media to taunt authorities. This prediction would prove remarkably accurate as events unfolded. While the profiling was underway, investigators made a crucial breakthrough. They discovered that one of the victims, Amelia Rapadil, had last been seen before an appointment to see a man named Moses Sithole on September 7, 1995. A job application form was found indicating she had been offered a position. When a second victim showed a similar connection to Sithole, police were confident they had identified their suspect. However, they were unable to locate Sithole, who continued his killing spree unfazed by the manhunt and media attention. The body of Agnes Mbuli was discovered near Benoni on October 3, 1995, bringing his confirmed victim count to at least 30 women and one toddler, the 2-year-old son of one of his victims, whom he had inflicted with a head wound and left to die from exposure. On the same day Agnes Mbuli's body was discovered, Sithole made the call that would lead to his downfall. He contacted South African journalist Tamsin de Beer at the Star newspaper, identifying himself as Joseph Magwena and claiming to be the man that is so highly wanted. During the lengthy interview, he claimed responsibility for almost all the murders but denied involvement in the Cleveland killings. In his chilling conversation with De Beer, Sithole claimed that the killings were carried out in revenge for his unjust imprisonment. Most shocking of all, he claimed responsibility for 76 victims, nearly twice as many as those officially reported. To prove his identity, he provided directions to where one of the bodies had been left, information only the killer would know. An attempt to set up a meeting with Sithole failed, but police continued their pursuit. 3 more bodies were discovered over the next 10 days, forcing authorities to release Sithole's details to the public. On October 18, 1995, when Sithole attempted to contact his family for assistance, undercover police officers were waiting. During his arrest, Sithole attacked a police constable with a hatchet and was shot in the leg and stomach while attempting to flee. He was transported to the hospital, where medical tests revealed he was HIV positive and also had tuberculosis. On October 23, 1995, Sithole was charged with 29 murders at the Magistrates Court in Brakpan. By the time his trial began on October 21, 1996, mounting evidence had increased the charges against him to 38 counts of murder, 40 counts of rape, and 6 counts of robbery. The prosecution built a chronological picture of his crimes, introducing harrowing testimony from his earliest rape victims and detailing his connection with each murdered victim. A key piece of evidence was a video recording made during Sithole's initial incarceration, in which he candidly admitted to 29 murders. In this confession, he described his technique in detail and claimed he had begun killing in July 1995, selecting victims for their resemblance to Bayeswa Doris Swakamaisa, whom he blamed for his first jail sentence. The admissibility of this illegally recorded confession caused significant delays in the trial proceedings. The case was postponed until January 29, 1997, and technical issues relating to the evidence further delayed the trial until July 29, 1997, when the judge finally ruled the evidence admissible. Throughout the trial, Sithole maintained his innocence despite the overwhelming evidence against him. His testimony was often described as rambling and incoherent. The prosecution presented a meticulous case detailing the specific techniques Sithole used to lure his victims to their deaths, often using the promise of employment as bait. On December 4, 1997, more than a year after the case had commenced, Moses Sithole was found guilty on all charges. It took 3 hours to read the verdict, requiring sentencing to be postponed until the following day. On December 5, 1997, Justice David Kerr-Lewis delivered the sentence that would ensure Sithole never walked free again. He was sentenced to 50 years imprisonment for each of the 38 murders, 12 years for each of the 40 rapes, and 5 years for each of the 6 robberies. With sentences running consecutively, the total was 2,410 years in prison. Justice Kerr-Lewis ordered that Sithole would be required to serve at least 930 years before being eligible for parole, making him eligible for release at the age of 963. The judge also stated that if capital punishment had still been legal in South Africa, he would have sentenced Sithole to death without hesitation. Sithole was initially incarcerated in CMAX, the maximum security section of Pretoria Central Prison, the highest security cell block in South Africa. In a cruel irony, the medical treatment for his HIV condition in prison far exceeded any treatment available to the average South African citizen at the time, potentially extending his life considerably, albeit behind bars. Today, Sithole is housed in Mangong Correctional Center in Bloemfontein, where he continues to serve his sentence. Police suspect he may have been responsible for the deaths of at least 75 people, though he was only convicted of 38 murders. Sithole's case raised profound questions about the psychological factors that create serial killers. His troubled childhood, marked by abandonment, abuse, and poverty, followed by sexual assault in prison, created a perfect storm of psychological damage. Yet these circumstances, while tragic, cannot excuse the horror he inflicted on his victims and their families. In some cases, Sithole would phone the victims' families after the murders for no apparent reason other than to taunt them, demonstrating a level of cruelty that went beyond the killings themselves. This psychological torture of grieving families revealed the depth of his sadistic nature. The investigation into Sithole's crimes also highlighted the challenges faced by law enforcement in post-apartheid South Africa. The country was virtually overrun by serial killers in the wake of apartheid's collapse, straining police resources and requiring international assistance to solve complex cases. The legacy of Moses Sithole extends far beyond the courtroom. His victims were predominantly young black women from impoverished communities, individuals already marginalized by society, whose deaths might have gone unnoticed were it not for the sheer scale of the crimes. Many of his victims were never fully identified, representing the countless anonymous lives lost to violence. The case also demonstrated the crucial importance of witness testimony and media cooperation in solving serial crimes. The brave decision by journalist Tamsin de Beer to cooperate with authorities, despite the personal risk, proved instrumental in Sithole's conviction when she testified at the Pretoria High Court. Sithole's crimes occurred during a critical period in South African history as the nation struggled to build a new democratic society from the ashes of apartheid. His case highlighted the ongoing challenges of violence against women in South African society, an issue that continues to plague the country today. The ABC murders also showcased the evolution of criminal investigation techniques in South Africa. The involvement of international experts like Robert Ressler helped establish profiling methods that would benefit future investigations, while the work of South African profiler Mickey Pistorius demonstrated the country's growing expertise in forensic psychology. The case raised important questions about the rehabilitation of offenders and the effectiveness of the parole system. Sighthole's early release for good behavior after his rape conviction directly enabled his subsequent murder spree, highlighting the need for better assessment of violent offenders. Today, South Africa has developed one of the world's most successful criminal profiling units, with investigators who have provided training to Scotland Yard and the FBI. The lessons learned from cases like Sithole's have contributed to more effective methods of catching serial offenders before they can claim more victims. The Moses Sithole case also emphasized the importance of addressing childhood trauma and institutional abuse. His experiences in the orphanage system and the subsequent abandonment by his mother created psychological wounds that, left untreated, contributed to his later violence. The investigation revealed the killer's remarkable ability to charm and manipulate his victims. Like many serial killers, Sithole appeared perfectly normal to those around him, walking in broad daylight, smiling and chatting with his intended victims before leading them to their deaths. This facade of normalcy made him particularly dangerous and difficult to detect. The case highlighted the vulnerability of women seeking employment in a society with limited opportunities. Sithole exploited the desperation of women looking for work, using their hope for a better future as a weapon against them. This aspect of his crimes underscored the socio-economic inequalities that made certain populations particularly vulnerable to predators. Robert Ressler's involvement in the case was significant, not only for solving these particular crimes, but for establishing international cooperation in criminal investigations. His prediction that the killer would contact the media proved accurate and demonstrated the value of psychological profiling in understanding criminal behavior. The story of Moses Sithole serves as a stark reminder of the capacity for evil that can exist within seemingly ordinary individuals. His crimes devastated families, terrorized communities, and left an indelible mark on South African society during a critical period of transition. Yet the investigation that brought him to justice also demonstrated the power of international cooperation, the importance of dedicated law enforcement, and the courage of individuals like Tamsin de Beer, who risked their safety to ensure justice was served. The families of Sithole's victims showed remarkable strength in their pursuit of justice, attending court proceedings and ensuring their loved ones were not forgotten. Their resilience in the face of unimaginable tragedy exemplifies the human spirit's ability to endure and seek meaning even in the darkest circumstances. In retracing the Trail of Terror, the ABC murders of Moses Sithole, we are reminded of the importance of vigilance against those who would prey upon the vulnerable, the critical need to address childhood trauma and institutional abuse, and the enduring spirit of a nation striving to overcome its darkest periods. Most importantly, we remember the 38 women and 1 child whose lives were cut short by Sithole's violence. Individuals with hopes, dreams, and families who loved them. Their memory serves as a testament to the preciousness of human life and the ongoing fight for justice in societies around the world. If this deep dive into one of South Africa's most harrowing chapters has moved you, please like, share, and subscribe for more content that explores the complexities of human nature, the pursuit of justice, and the resilience of communities in the face of evil.